And now on deck with the Tom Sox, hosted by Ben Rekosh.
We have made it to the end of the 2025 season. Today we're going to recap everything that has happened since May 30th to July 30th. The 10th season of Tom Sox baseball is in the books, and I am Ben Rekosh on deck with the Tom Sox, joined by a panel of guests to go through stats, to go through games, to go through the championship series, to go through players, to go through awards, to go through coaches, to go through memories of everything that has happened in the summer of 2025. I'll introduce my guests and then we'll get into it. I am joined by Nathan Schwartz, Daniel Stein, Jeremy Rose, Luke Stefanisko, and Landon Weaver here on Deck with the Tom Sox. It's been a pleasure with these five guys all summer, and I'm excited to dive into the entirety of the season with them right here. We'll start with the regular season, and I'll start with Nathan Schwartz. 24-20 to end, I guess, in a total record for the Tom Sox this year. We'll start with the obvious. It was the worst start in franchise history. 3-7 through 10 games, 3-9 through the first 12. Post All-Star break, still not a great record. It was those couple of weeks in between that rough start and that All-Star break that really propelled the Tom Sox into ending up with the 3 seed. Nathan, I'll leave it to you. As I said, overall, can you recap the regular season for us?
Man, I don't know if there's enough words to recap everything, but I think a theme that we'll talk about a lot throughout this episode is resiliency, perseverance, being able to overcome challenges, and I think that's what this group did best. Of course, summer baseball, we talked about it on the first episode of the summer, Ben, with the roster changing constantly, and a lot of those guys that were on the roster the first week and a half were not on the starting lineup card for game 3 of the championship the other night. So you get those acquisitions mid-June, late June, with the regionals ending up and all that. And then that's when the Tom Sox started to kick it into high gear. Those injuries got ridiculous down the stretch, and that might have led to, some different outcomes at the end of the season. But ultimately, this is a team that nobody expected to make it to the championship. I know we didn't expect it in the dog days of the summer and the end of June, beginning of July. It was a team that had a lot of issues, a lot of errors, walks, miscues, but they had a lot of positives too. So there's really not one word to describe it. But I think that theme of resiliency and perseverance is what I'll remember this team by the most.
Jeremy, take us back to the 3-9 start. Obviously, it's the worst in franchise history, as I mentioned. Errors kind of plagued the Tom Sox early on, and it was big innings that they let up the pitching staff, whether it be 7 runs or 8 runs, just deficits that were too hard to come back from. What do you remember from that 2 or 3 week stretch at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think the word to sum that one up would be rough. It was not the start that any of us were really looking for. I think by the time that 3-9 stretch was over, we were all kind of like, okay, this is gonna be one of those seasons where the team just doesn't quite pull it together. You have to keep a positive mindset on the broadcast, positive mindset in interactions. But just, it was the defensive miscues as you talked about, just errors, just those big innings that the Sox continue to give up, whether it was walks hit by pitches, timely hitting, maybe a bloop single here, bloop single there, a dropped ball into foul territory that turned into a home run a pitch or two later, and just things weren't working out well for the Sox. We all kind of had come to the conclusion that this was not going to be the Sox year, but then there was also that thought in the back of our heads, at least in the back of my head, of this is a team with a lot of guys who have experience at either the JUCO level or guys who haven't seen live pitching more than maybe 10 times at the collegiate level. And this was really their first look at it. And you're playing in the summer, you're playing in a new town with new teammates, new city, new living situation, new routines. And, it was just a question of would they finally piece it together? Would they finally get the ball rolling? And I'd say they did.
We'll go through the circle for each segment of the regular season. Next up is Daniel Stein right here. That 2 or 3 week stretch I mentioned between the 3-9 start and the All-Star break, that's kind of when things got going. There were players that joined the roster. Everything kind of clicked in terms of the pitching staff. The bats were alive. And it's what you wanted. It's what you expect to see, and it's what we expected to see from this Tom Sox roster. Daniel Stein, we'll talk about the guys a little bit more specifically in a couple of minutes. but just what were your takeaways from that stretch between the rough start and the All-Star break?
Yeah, I think the most significant thing for me, guys, was the formation of the Tom Sox identity as a team, especially on offense. It became pretty apparent through the first 10 games or so that this wasn't going to be the most power-centric Tom Sox team ever. But in spite of that, there was a clear formation of, hey, look, we are going to be absolute menaces on the base paths. We're going to take advantage of mistakes made by the other team, and we're going to have sound base running and consistent hitting approaches that eventually lead to runs. Was it the most aesthetically pleasing form of offense ever? In my opinion, not exactly, but everyone has their own preferences, and it really doesn't matter because the Sox were able to win some games in this time. And on the pitching side, it was really going to be a relying on your defense and just, they struggled with the walks, but they kind of absorbed that and really limited the amount of power um, allowed by the other team as well. So it was a fun period for the Tom Sox, and especially after that rough start, you started to see an influx of different players, and also the team getting more comfortable with each other defensively as well, and also just the sense of camaraderie that was building. I think the first 10 games were really difficult because nobody really knew each other yet. There were a handful of guys that were teammates with each other in college, but that was about it. But then once you hit that second part of the season after the rough start and they started to win a little bit more, they had some more fun. And ultimately, I think that's a big reason why they played a lot better down the stretch.
Before I move on, I want to ask you again, talk about the All-Star break. The All-Star Sunday, it was Patrick Nias representing the Tom Sox in the Home Run Derby, and then a number of guys making an impact in the All-Star game itself in Harrisonburg. What do you remember, and how special is that day, just for the guys playing in it, and then for everybody involved?
Yeah, it was a really fun time. Patrick Nias, came into that home run derby as I wouldn't say he was the favorite because nobody on the Tom Sox would be the favorite because of the lack of power, but he actually put in a really solid performance in a college stadium too, in a stadium like Eagle Field, where at JMU, which is not easy to hit a home run in. That JMU team and that Harrisonburg team really didn't hit a ton of home runs either. And that was a really cool experience as well. And then you had the All-Star game. Trevor Booten, Kyle Langley, Preston Gamster, they all put in really good performances. Booten pitched really well. Kyle Langley, of course, coming back to his home park, was really solid there too. It was overall a really fun experience. We got an absolutely electric mic'd up Coy segment, which was fantastic. I'm sure everyone watched that on the socials. But it was a really special day, and it was super fun to watch it all go down.
Luke, 3-7 or 3-4 record in 7 games after the All-Star break. A playoff push. Obviously, every team was making the playoffs, but seeding still an implication and still mattered for everything. That week and a half or so after the Sunday festivities in Harrisonburg, what were the vibes of the team like? What was going through everybody's mind, and how they end up with the 3 seed?
Well, I think there was three key injuries that kind of really plagued the team in that long stretch, and it was JT Gibson, Preston Gamster, and Elijah Williams. Those three guys were three of the guys who had kind of held that team together through the late stretch before the All-Star break. I mean, Elijah had come on a little bit later, but Preston and JT Gibson were the ace of the staff and the shortstop of the squad. Those two guys were key on the roster, and both of them going down, it really just kind of said, this is going to be a rough stretch. How do you, respond to it? And they didn't respond the best to it. There was the tough loss in the game to Culpepper, the tough loss at Stanton, in which they could have moved into a spot to earn the 2 seed. But I think it was just the effect of a long season finally starting to show on the team, because they had, the really good stretch before the All-Star break, and you didn't really see the dog days of summer affecting them at all. And I think that was the part of why they struggled so much after the All-Star break, was it finally started to hit them that this is a long season and you've played a lot of days in a row. And I think that finally started to show, and the wear and tear really affected the Sox in this stretch.
Landon, obviously Harrisonburg locked up the 1 seed pretty early in the season. They were dominant all year, the Turks were. And it was the Tom Sox and the Braves in a battle for third and second place. Take me through that, and take me through how Charlottesville ultimately ended up at number 3 heading into the playoffs.
Well, I think Luke said it best. That game against Stanton was really huge, and the Sox were unable to get their bats going. And then they lost, I think it was 3-1. And, from then on, it was like, okay, 3 seed, we're locked into it. But the fact that they were even in a position to go for the 3 seed, I think is bigger in itself, considering the 3-9 start. Then you go on, I think it was like a 17-8 run in the last half of the season. So that's resiliency right there. And Stanton kind of fell off a little bit there. Them and Harrisonburg were kind of neck and neck for a little bit. Then they kind of went on a cold stretch. And then, yeah, the Tom Sox were able to get a few wins in a row. And ultimately, I think they fell short. They were tired. That game against Stanton was in the middle of a 4 or 5 game stretch. So it just kind of goes to show the resiliency of the team and how they were able to come back. And we saw it even after the regular season ended. The comebacks continued, and the 3 seed ended up being a pretty good spot for them.
I'd say so, and that's a great transition to where I want to go next, and a great word to keep an eye on as well as resiliency. Resiliency, just the factor, and really how the Tom Sox got it done all season through the regular season and the playoffs. Nathan, I'll start with you as I started with you on the other one. Round one, 8-5 W against Waynesboro at Show Airport Field. The name to watch in this one was Brandon Eldridge. 6 2/3. 3 hits, 1 run, and 5 strikeouts on the mound. His best outing by far of the season. I'll leave it to you with an open-ended question like this. If you had told me, or if I had told you, I guess, that he would be the game one playoff starter in June, and he would throw 6 2/3, and the Tom Sox would win, what would you say?
You're crazy. That's what I would have said. You're crazy. I mean, not to bring up any bad memories, but we all remember Brandon's first appearance of the season against Strasburg. I believe it was June 12th or something like that. And it was not pretty. And, of course, Brandon only got better from that point on. That was just a really sour way to start it. So the expectations for him going through those next 2 appearances were like, okay, what are we going to get here? We've seen it blow up before, but then Brandon just continued to dial in and dial in. But I think in that playoff game, what impressed me the most is he really hadn't had that starting experience yet this summer. He had started, quote unquote, that resumption game we played in Harrisonburg the week prior, but it had been 8 days since he had pitched. He hadn't truly started a game from the first inning on it all season. And given that was a Waynesboro team that had a lot of guys leave, and it was a lineup that I think they were pretty much ready to be done at that point. But still, the fact that you're able to throw 6 2/3 innings, only allow 3 hits, get those 5 strikeouts, throw 92 pitches in a must-win game at home, and you get the run support from your guys. I mean, it was just something special to watch. And then, the guys to follow that, it kind of fell off the rails a little bit there at the end. But to get that big start is something that the Tom Sox needed, not only in that game, but then going forward into the Stanton game, into the Culpepper game, and then into the championship series. If Eldridge doesn't give you those 6 2/3 innings in the first playoff game, things are looking a lot different in that Stanton game, especially when, with Luke mentioned, you didn't have Gibson. Allwine had been out for a while, and he hasn't pitched. Imagine if he was still here. Tim Lawson was dealing with some stuff there at the end of the season too. So the Tom Sox needed a guy, and they needed a performance like that, and I'm glad it was Brandon to deliver it.
Yeah, a great Thursday night game right there, and you talked about it. Brandon Eldridge, a guy that told me he hasn't pitched he hasn't pitched over 5 innings since his senior year in high school, and now he's going into his senior year in college. So really, really impressive from him. And as we talked about, it's small ball that won the Tom Sox that game. The only home run was by Waynesboro, and it was Mac Dye. So resiliency once again. Tom Sox had a big lead. The Generals crept up on it, thought that the season might be in jeopardy, and then ultimately ended up pulling out the W. Jeremy Rose, you were on the call for the next game in the semifinals. This one we had to drive to Waynesboro or to Stanton twice. That's the unfortunate thing about it. The fortunate thing is that the Tom Sox got the win regardless. 10-7 W. It was about 178 degrees all day. It was brutal heat, 1 o'clock game at John Moxley Memorial Stadium. 10-7, as I mentioned, trailing 6-0 after 6 innings, and then 7 runs scored in the 8th and 9th. This was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster of 2 days, of 36 hours. Take me through the turn of events and how the Tom Sox ultimately ended up taking home the W.
Yeah, I think this game kind of, in its own right, encapsulated the entire Tom Sox season. It was a game played in extreme heat, a game that got canceled the day before due to inclement weather. Those two things had plagued the Sox all summer long. And then you show up, you're down 6-0. Your defense kind of holds you into it, keeps you in the game for a little bit, and then the second half of the game, the offense finally comes alive. That, was the Tom Sox way for both the start of the season, and then that carries them into the playoffs. 16 come from behind wins, and there was probably no bigger one than the one in Stanton. The Sox had struggled playing at John Moxley Stadium. And, I think once the Sox were down 6-0, Dale and I on the call had kind of almost given up a little bit of, it is 133 degrees out here. We're holding umbrellas just to keep ourselves cool on this broadcast, just to preserve my laptop from overheating while we're running our streaming system. And then the runs and the hits start to come together. The Sox piece together that 6 straight hits inning that finally brings them alive. And, you're facing off against this pitching staff that the Sox had not been able to hit all season long. And, Evan Kohler on the mound, a guy the Sox had struggled against. And then, the magic starts to happen and the Sox start to string things together, get base runners on. Kohler comes out of the game, and all of a sudden the wheels are off and the Sox are off and running. So I think this game just kind of encapsulated the entire season, the come from behind efforts, the cancellations, the chaos of it all, the chaos of the Tom Sox season. And this game did kind of the best job of truly bringing all that together. A huge win for the Sox, and that was the momentum that they needed to propel themselves through into Game 3 of the championship series, which of course wasn't the result we were looking for. But I think that game against Stanton at Stanton on day 2 in the heat was really just the piece that really brought it all together.
And that was, I'd say, the one team that had had the Tom Sox number all season. It wasn't the first place Harrisonburg Turks. It wasn't Culpeper. It wasn't certainly the other teams in the VBL South nor the North, especially given that the Tom Sox played the teams in the South twice the amount of times that they played the teams in the North. So getting that win in Stanton was monumental, and I don't think a lot of people expected or thought that it could or would happen. So what a better time for the first win at John Moxley Memorial Stadium in 2025. Daniel Stein, a long one, but ultimately the championship was gotten 5-4, 12-inning walk-off W. A lot of plays to go through for this one. We waited it out for a while. Started at 9:17 p.m. Lasted almost 4 hours. Toughness, grit, small ball, pitching. An incredible performance from the Tom Sox to ultimately get this one going. Evan Tavares double, Jackson Soroy, walk-off. What was happening in the South Division Championship against Culpeper? How did they win?
Yeah, this was another game that, like Jeremy said about the Stanton game, kind of encapsulated the Tom Sox season. They found themselves down. The pitching at the start wasn't great, and we were kind of on a run at the end of the regular season where we weren't really committing that many errors. The defense has improved a lot over the course of the season, and then all of a sudden, Jackson Soroy, one of the most sure-handed defenders on our team, just boots a ball, and 2 runs come in to score. And so at first we're kind of like, okay, this, I'm not sure how in it they really are to win, and this might be where our season ends. But you can't count the Tom Sox out of the game, because no matter how undialed you think a summer league team is, the Tom Sox are going to be more dialed in, because they just are they are so used to playing from behind. And that's what they were doing. Hudson Luderman had that game tying RBI single at the end of the game. And then Jackson Soroy also had, obviously, the walk-off hit error, whatever you want to call it. I think it was originally scored as a single, and that's probably what it was with the bases loaded. But I think it's weird because the Tom Sox got their momentum this season, got their momentum in so many different ways and by so many different things. Because how can you find a consistent rhythm when every other game is getting rained out, or it's 110,000 degrees at every other game? But what happened in the Culpeper game was sometime in like the 4th inning, the 5th inning, sometime in the first half, assistant coach Joey Davis gets into an argument with Ethan Belk, the Culpeper 2-hitter who was on deck, about retrieving the ball and putting it back in the dugout so it can be cleaned and given back to the umpire. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or unintentional, but whatever it did, it completely changed the momentum because then Belk goes up to the plate, he gets struck out, he gets stared at, and then the Sox are a completely new team in the second half of the game. And I think that that is, in a nutshell, how the team kind of got their rhythm. It's this never back down competitive spirit that ultimately lifted them over a Culpeper team that was sneaky. They have a lot of really good players, and they had a really solid pitcher at the end of that game, Mason Breton, who was a Valley League all first team selection this year. But yet the Tom Sox pulled through and they went back to the title. It was an insane game.
Yeah, I mean, it's still speechless from what happened in that one. Defense turning into offense. You know, you talk about that in sports like basketball and football a lot, whether you get an interception or a fast break play. But the momentum that a solid or even Sports Center worthy defensive play can give a team going on offense, it's incredible. And there are numerous cases of ones you can talk about this season, numerous ones in the postseason, but that was the case on Sunday, July 27th, in a game that went well past 1 o'clock and well past the next day. Nathan Schwartz, your following line. We'll see you tomorrow night. Luke, I'll hand it to you. Game 1 in Strasburg, 10-inning thriller after a game that had ended at 1:30, 1:15 a.m. The guys were ready. They wanted it. They wanted to win. They got in the mindset that if we're here, why don't we win this game? 11-12, it was rough. Once again, getting out of it, coming back into it. Luke, take us through game 1 of the championship series.
This is probably, and to be quite honest, I think everyone would agree, the game of the year in the Valley Baseball League. This had a little bit of everything. And it's kind of crazy because the Express are such a good team and they have this squad of guys that are built around the stadium they play in. And the Sox were always going to have a tough time handling, the Express's power and their ability to hit the baseballs out of the park, as they had tripled the amount of home runs that Tom Sox had this season. But the Sox went down early, a couple of solo shots from the Express. Lucas Cash started the game and actually provided the Sox with a pretty solid start, went 4 innings, only allowed 2 runs in those 4 innings, allowed a walk, and that ended up becoming an earned run in the 5th inning when Lane Duff entered and found some struggles. But the Sox weren't done. Kyle Langley hit a 3-run shot, gave them the lead early on in that game, and it just kind of felt that they were never out of this game. But then the Express had a huge inning, put themselves up, and it kind of sucked the life out of the Sox section of the ballpark. But yet again, they never wavered. They got to some of the Express guys that pitched, and they made it a ball game. Saxon Roberts had, quite honestly, one of the best pitching performances of the season for the Tom Sox on a bullpen that was short on arms. Saxon went 4 innings, struck out 8 batters, and every time he would get a strikeout to end an inning or an out, it would be electric. He'd be jawing at the Express dugout, and that honestly gave momentum for the Sox to tie the game up. I mean, it was just such an amazing game to watch, and they took it into extra innings, stranded some base runners, and the Express walked it off. But I think the way that they lost that game and the way it ended for them, I think there's a clear distinction of why they battled back the next day to pick up a win in game 2 after the really rough loss in game 1.
Fantastic transition, and I'll bring it right back to you once again. A packed house at Cho Airport Field, almost a 4-hour contest once again, and a thriller. 1 run separating the two teams, 7-8. The Tom Sox take home the win. The story in this one, Luke, was the runners left on base, not only for the Tom Sox, but also for the Express. Umpires coming in and out of the game. The Strasburg second baseman getting drilled in the face by a liner. By a liner. I mean, that was crazy. We hope he's doing okay, and it was really impressive that he got right up. But this one, as did many of the previous games in the VBL playoffs, kind of had everything and kind of encapsulated the Tom Sox season.
Yeah, and again, it's another crazy game. I mean, and just a wild finish. The Sox were kind of in a really rough spot late in that game. The Express had played a solid game. They had their best reliever, Davis Budden, who hadn't really been touched a long time this season. He'd been really rock solid for them. And a bold decision from Randy Tomlin late in that game to take out Lee Sowers and to bring in Evan Tavares, who is not a second baseman, so you had to make a defensive sub regardless, but he wanted the matchup. But traditionally Tavares pinch hits when a lefty's on the mound. They brought Tavares in against a righty, and he delivered a 2 RBI double to tie the game up late. And that was probably one of the coolest moments I've ever been in the ballpark for, because you felt like that was the at bat. That was it for the Sox. If Tavares was out, that game was probably over. Davis Bud was going to cruise through the ninth inning most likely, and the Sox were done. But I mean, off the bat, I knew there was a chance that would get down, and it found a spot in the right field line. Paul Osting, the right fielder, misplayed it, and that's probably why he DH'd for Game 3, because I don't think the Express staff was very happy about the way he played that ball off the wall. But that allowed Will Genowine to score as the tying run, and then you go into the ninth. Hudson Luderman, a guy who's had a living this season of going pull side, goes up the middle for a sacrifice fly to win the ball game, and again just energized the ballpark, made everybody want to go win Game 3. And I think with the way Game 3 ended, I think the mood in the ballpark for Game 2 was special, and I think that the way that game ended, I think is the way the season I wished it would have ended personally, because I wish we could erase Game 3 from our minds. And I know Landon will be on the next to talk about Game 3, and I'm sorry, Landon, you have to discuss what happened in Game 3.
Well, let's go for a little bit more on Game 2. I want to talk about Game 2 and then go back to the South Championship. Both those games will forever be etched in Tom Sox history as two of the greatest games that this franchise has ever played in its 10-year tenure. A mentality of never giving up. Why not us? Why not now, Landon? Has kind of been this team all year. And there were several moments in both of those games that everybody, including us, including the players, including the coaches, including everyone at Cho Airport Field, thought that the season was over. There was a foul ball late in the game in Game 2 that looked like it was going fair. It looked like it was a no-doubt home run, and it looked like it was going to be the nail in the coffin for the Tom Sox. The Tom Sox were down to 2 strikes, 2 outs multiple times. They were down to a sacrifice fly needed to win, and Hudson Luderman or Perry Hargett got it done. Kyle Langley sending one out, giving everybody some hope. Just talk about that mentality and how that kind of lifted the Tom Sox up all season, especially when everybody thought they were out, down but never out.
It just goes to show that the team is just full of a bunch of dogs. That's just the best way to put it. They know that they can come back because they've seen it before. It's like once you've done it once, then it becomes not easier, but you know it's possible. And just that 1% chance and having that possibility that, okay, we're down 3-0 in the Valley in the South Championship, we can still come back. Okay, we're down 4-3 in the bottom of the ninth. We're not worried. We can still come back. And it seemed like every time they needed something, they got it done. And the only time that they unfortunately couldn't was in Game 3, but that's credit to Strasburg's pitching staff. They pitched a game that nobody in the Valley League would have been able to hit off of them. But it just goes to show the resiliency. And one play that I think really encapsulates all of that is the 3-2-3 double play between, my Hokies, Anderson French, and Hudson Luderman. It was a pretty cool moment. And it's a gutsy play because you throw it to home. French has got to be right place, right time, and he is. And then the wherewithal to see that Keone Painter isn't even close to first base and to whip it back over to Luderman. Luderman's got to be ready for that too. And he was, and that, that lifted the momentum, lifted the confidence for them to go get that walk-off RBI and totally shot Culpepper in the foot, and their confidence was shot. So it's moments like that, and, think back to the Stanton game. French laced one into the right field line and hit off the fence, almost a grand slam, but nonetheless, that was one of the turning points in the game too. There's just all it takes is one swing, and I think the Tom Sox had that mentality throughout the regular season, throughout the postseason as well. And I think it's 16 comeback wins over the course of the season. That's improbable. That's almost a quarter of all the games. So to come back in all of those, it's fantastic, and it's just a bunch of dogs out there.
All it takes is one swing. That was the case for every single game this season, including the playoffs, including Game 3 of the championship series, and that one swing never happened. For the first time in franchise history, the Tom Sox got no hit in a 9-inning game, and that game came in one of the most important games in franchise history, ultimately losing to Strasburg to claim their 4th Valley League title, their first since 2021. Not a whole lot to say about this one. Really impressive pitching from John Gray. No hit, as I mentioned. Just couldn't get anything going offensively. We'll move on quickly from this one, but there was hope. There was hope after game one. There was hope after game two. And even in game three, there was still hope. Just because of what we have seen the Tom Sox do, even through the eighth and ninth inning in a game that was flying by, um, nobody was out of it. Everybody thought that the Tom Sox still had a chance. 2 runs on the board, both by wild pitches. That's that Tom Sox small ball we were talking about. Ultimately couldn't get the bats going and come up as a runner-up in the Valley Baseball League once again. 7th championship appearance in the past 8 seasons, of course, for the Tom Sox. Missed it in 2021, but this is the 4th in the row, was 2025. Still sit at 4 Jim Line Weaver Cups, which is mighty impressive in franchise history, but still chasing that ultimate back-to-back. And the Tom Sox now hold a 33-17 all-time record in the postseason and a 17-5 record in elimination games. So obviously, Game 3 of the championship series leaving a sour taste in everybody's mouth. Not how anyone wanted the season to end. Anyone. Not the team, not the coaches, not the fans, not us. Nobody wanted to end it in getting the first no-hitter against us in franchise history. But ultimately, a resilient season, a season to be proud of, and a season that started with the worst record in franchise history and ended with the 7th championship series appearance in franchise history, taking the best team and one of the best players that the Valley has ever seen to 3 games in the VBL championship. Jeremy, I'll leave it to you for a little bit. Talk about Landon Weaver, talk about the season as a whole, talk about what the Strasburg Express did, and talk about just what this team has meant to this organization.
Yeah, I mean, as it pertains to Strasburg, I don't want to talk all too much about them just because it's probably going to leave another sour taste or a sour thought in my mind. But the Express played their brand of baseball. I mean, they played in the smallest park in the valley, with probably the second steepest mound in the valley, and they played well at home. It was, as Luke mentioned earlier, the ultimate home field advantage, and they really took that and ran with it. They've done it in years past where, they played at this field, they build their roster around their field, and the nail in the coffin was a flyout in every other single stadium in the valley, a 300 and probably 15-foot fly ball the opposite way off the bat of Beaver, who done it all season long, and that was, I think, his 16th home run of the year, maybe his 15th of the year. And just the way they built their roster around power hitting, and the pitching wasn't all too phenomenal. I mean, John Gray delivered the best start that they've seen, and it wasn't even remotely close. There wasn't a guy who had, gone 6+ innings and, collected 8+ strikeouts. Nobody done that. The Sox had 3 or 4 guys do that this season. And, they got that great start that they needed from Gray, and that was really all it took. The offense provided the rest of the firepower, and Landon Beaver, a hell of a season from him, honestly. Top 5 batting average in the Valley, led the league in home runs, led the league in RBIs, led the league in OPS. Just everything he could have done right, he did right. Played to the advantage of their stadium, and now he gets to go play up in the Cape. So props to him for a phenomenal season. Did his job all throughout the postseason, all throughout the regular season. And then just this season for the Sox, you missed that coveted back-to-back that you've been searching for this entire time. It's 4 straight appearances now in the championship, and you win every other year. The Sox have, been there, and every other year in franchise history, you win one every other season. And it's just you want to get to that spot, you want to get to that hump. And this team, while it didn't initially look like it would be the roster to do so, had the desire to do so. And you just know that if 1 or 2 of those injuries hadn't happened, Preston Gamster doesn't get hurt, James Nunnally doesn't have to leave to go, down to Mississippi State. Maybe Andrew Manley hangs around for another couple of days. Evan Allwine doesn't get hurt. Maybe JT Gibson doesn't get hurt. Just 1 or 2 of those injuries at some point down the stretch of the season doesn't happen. The Sox are over that hump, and all it takes is a little stroke of bad luck, and you find yourself back on the losing end of another VBL championship series. But this season was it was monumental. A lot of things happened. Everything that could have happened, it feels like happened and then some. Whether it was an injury, whether it was a game being played, whether it was players coming off the roster at not great times for whether it was for them or whether for other purposes. Everything that could have happened, and it just showed the resilience, as Nate had kind of mentioned earlier, and just the perseverance of this team to go out there every day and continue to compete down the stretch, even when it seemed like nobody wanted to be there. You know, you can't really fake baseball. You know, you've got to play hard every opportunity you get. And the Sox did that down the stretch, just couldn't close the door one more time.
For one last time, I'll quote somebody, and I think that this quote kind of rings true for the last week or two of the season, especially as the team was ramping up throughout the playoffs and after Game 2, notably. From the great Ted Lasso, and it goes by, "It's the hope that kills you," and that's kind of how we felt for a lot of the time. And for a while, the hope it really helped us, but ultimately, strike out on that fifth Valley League title. I'll run through a couple of stats here. I don't need anybody to chime in, but if you have anything to say, you're more than welcome to bump in and contribute how you want. A couple of facts that we already mentioned: 16 come from behind wins. 4 of those were walk-offs. The injury bug really plagued the Tom Sox this year. Here's the list of players that were once on the active roster and were not ultimately due to injury: Evan Allwine, JT Gibson, Jason Band, Preston Gamster, Elijah Williams. All big contributors for the Tom Sox through the entirety of the season. There are some that I don't necessarily want to say, but statistically, this was one of the worst seasons in Tom Sox franchise history, whether it be in walks or whether it be in Tom Sox batting average or whether it be in errors. You name it, it was not great by many accounts. And ultimately, they prevailed and made it to the championship round. I want to give a shout out to the players that were on the roster from opening day to the championship. Please forgive me if I miss anyone, but we got Patrick Neas, Kyle Langley, Hudson Luderman, Jackson Soroy, Tanner Shadle, Dawson Newman, Tim Lawson, Lane Duff, Riley Rorty, Trevor Booten, and Alex Spangler. Big shout out to all of those guys, even with all the turnaround through the entirety of the Tom Sox season and through every iteration of summer baseball. Those guys stuck it out through thick and through thin, through a lot of rain, through a lot of heat, through a lot of losing, and then through a lot of winning. Once again, shout out to those guys right there. And then I'll leave this one to Nathan. He can speak on it a little bit. Going from 2023 to now, 11 games postponed due to inclement weather this season. That was another story that we haven't really touched on so far today. Only 42 games played in 2020. Excuse me, 44 games played in 2025. Third fewest in franchise history. 2023, there were 12 games postponed due to weather-related incidents, and then a couple of additional ones as well. But the weather, what's been up with it this year?
Oh, I came back. That's what happened. And in 23, there was a lot of rain, and we had all the air quality stuff going on. If you fans remember that in Charlottesville back in 23, and then last year I was gone, and apparently the weather was pristine and it was beautiful all summer, not much rain. And then I come back, and the rain starts flowing in again. I go on vacation for 2 weeks. I don't think there was one game, maybe one game rained out in that time. And as soon as I get on a plane back, there's a doubleheader that gets canceled due to rain, right? So, it's just one of those things. It's the Valley, there's going to be all these pop-up storms and stuff, but you got to give credit where credit's due, to the league for being able to handle all of that and to navigate it. Our team president, Chesley Mullins, for doing a great job and keeping our players safe. I think that's the most important thing here, especially with the heat. There was some rough days, especially in there at the end of June, where the guy shouldn't have been out there and we didn't play, and that was definitely the right move. And yeah, whether you play 44 games or you're supposed to play 48, a couple games got canceled there at the end of the season. You just couldn't make up the weather games. At the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily matter in the long run. The guys got reps. We had a great season. It unfortunately ends with the loss, but the weather, man, that sucked.
Just another tribute to the adaptability, flexibility, resiliency, perseverance of this team. You wake up, you think you're going to play, you think it's 7 o'clock. All right, I'll be there at 4:30, or I'll be there at 3:30, whatever it is that day. And then 2 o'clock rolls around and you get a text that there's not going to be a game that day. You got to figure out something to do. And then you got to also plan, hey, now tomorrow I'm going to play 2 games. How do I work with that? So that's a shout out to Coach Jim Darren as well. And Just working with how things went, and that was a big case of the Tom Sox this season. All right, let's move on a little bit right here to the All Valley League selections for the Tom Sox. 4 All Valley League selections this year for Charlottesville. First team, there's one member. He was a unanimous pick, and it's James Nunnally. James Nunnally, 18 stolen bases on the year, 17 games played. It's hard not to think about what would have happened if he didn't get hurt for those couple of games, and then if he had stayed with the Tom Sox for even a week or two more. He could have broken all sorts of records here in Charlottesville. But James Nunnally, an incredible performance all summer long for the month that he was here. Daniel, what do we got from Jimmy? 18 stolen bases. He hit a home run. It was barely out, and everybody on the Tom Sox social media was kind of flaming him for getting a home run on a fence that's about 295. But he still got that one out, and he made an impact. He was also a great vibes guy on the team.
Yeah, that in reference to that home run, it might be 290, but if Landon Weaver can hit one 315 to win the BBL championship, then James Nunnally can pimp a 310 home run down the right field line. Yeah, Nunnally was fantastic. There really wasn't anything he wasn't good at for a guy who's not super big. He hit for power a lot, constantly found the gaps in the defense offensively, and then defensively, he was a really good corner outfielder, stole a lot of bases as well. And in your references to vibes, I remember fondly one time after we came from behind and beat Percival, I was finishing up an interview when James walked by behind the camera and said, and I quote, "Let's go play some Moff," and I ended up throwing that into my game story. You know, a guy who really contributed to the character of the team. I think he represented the team culture in a lot of ways, which was like they were pretty straight laced, like, but they got things done. And I think Nunnally was an example of someone who played very aesthetically pleasing baseball. And it is interesting to think about what would have happened if he didn't get hurt in Harrisonburg, and how long would he have stayed? Would that have influenced his decision to go down to Mississippi State Mississippi State and start his training there early? But a fantastic player nonetheless, and really fun to watch.
3 selections on the second team of the All VBL South roster for the Tom Sox. Should have led with this one for you, Stein, but I'll give it to you anyways right now. Jackson Soroy, you got to know him a little bit, but you'll be getting to know him a little bit more headed down from Charlottesville, I guess up to College Park, Maryland. He had a great season. He was a mainstay in the lineup all year, spending some time at short, at second, working with guys in the middle of the infield that he hadn't worked with before, and that's difficult, and that was part of the reason for some of the errors in the early part of the season. But ultimately, he was at the top of the lineup as the playoffs and the regular season went along, and just one of the most impactful guys and one of the most true Tom Sox small ball players on this roster.
Yeah, Soroy was a guy who just got better as the season went on. I think that's the easiest thing to say. And that middle infield was something that was kind of a tough nut for the Sox to crack early on in that season. Before Preston Gamster got there, there was a kind of a rotation before Lee Sowers got there, just trying to figure out who was going to play there. But really the story with Soroy was his defense was always good. That you don't really have to worry about, but just the offense, just not hitting doubles, not hitting home runs, but just, I mean, the guy who was just a singles demon out there in the second half, finding the space in the defense and consistently putting bat to ball. I think he had 4 singles in the game versus Stanton in the playoffs, one of the most significant games of the season. And yeah, it's going to be really fun to continue to watch him at Maryland and see where his career goes. But he just got better and better as the season went on.
Jeremy Rose, you're wearing his jersey. He was an all VBL selection from JMU. He excelled at that park. He had power. He had incredible defensive plays from day one all the way to the last day of the season. Kyle Langley, there's not much you can say about this JMU Duke. What impressed you as you watched him all year?
Yeah, and I think for how great Jackson Soroy was down the stretch of this season and how impactful he was in any situation he was put in, when there was runners on base, there was nobody at the plate who you wanted up there besides number 14, Kyle Langley. And just his ability to, take advantage of pitchers having to pitch with runners on base, having to pitch with a guy 90 feet away from scoring a run, and his ability to put bat on ball on almost any occasion whenever it was called upon him to do so, even if it was a ground out here, a fly out there, he was always giving the offense a chance to do something, and I think that just really fed into the small ball ways of the Sox. He plays phenomenal defense out in center field, played right field for, kind of that middle stretch of the season, but then down the line you put him back out into center in his most comfortable spot, and he thrived out there. I mean, I don't know if he made an error all year. I don't think I have him down for an error all season long. It was phenomenal defense that you got every single time he was out there. Everybody knew the strength of his arm. Nobody ran on him, and that doesn't even show up on a stat sheet. Just his ability to silence runners on base, trying to tag up, going from, second to third, third to home with how good his arm was out there in the field. And then at the plate, it was consistency with runners in scoring position that really helped out the Sox a lot down the line. Maybe it wasn't too many super clutch moments, but when he was called upon, regardless of the moment, he brought in a run, he moved a runner over, and you can't, talk enough, say enough good things about the ability to do that. That translates to the next level, and I'm excited to see what Kyle Langley does in his next 2 years at JMU and then potentially at the next level as well.
And then last but certainly not least is Trevor Booten on the second team of the All VBL South roster. Etched himself in all sorts of Tom Sox record books right here. A returning player from last year, so obviously a champion, knew what it takes to win and knew what it takes to play in the Valley Baseball League. But Trevor Booten, we'll talk about it a little bit. 22 appearances, 47 and 2/3 innings pitched, 3.59 ERA, 2.11 opponent batting average, 6 wins. Landon, he was dynamite from the mound, and he was the go-to guy for the Sox all season.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, look, whenever he came up on the mound, it seemed like he was in a position where the Sox needed him to shut the other team out, and every single time he delivered. It's one of those consistent things, and you think back to where he played. He plays at Auburn, so obviously he's got a lot of talent. But the fact that he's your go-to reliever, and every time he was called upon, he succeeded. There weren't a whole lot of times where he would mess up or fail or put the Sox in a worse position than they were already in. And I remember hearing him say one time he was always concerned about keeping his ERA low and below that 2.0 mark, and he did that for a majority of the season. And it just goes to show that he had the drive and the capability to continue to help the Sox succeed in it. And I think he really helped Saxon a lot during the season, an Auburn counterpart, and he lifted him up. And you saw what Saxon was able to do in game one of the VBL championships. They didn't come out with the win, but I think Saxon has really learned from Trevor, being that older guy, how to come into a game, finish it off, and help the Sox pick up a win. It's just the team mentality that he has, and I think him also being in his second season in Charlottesville, he knows the league, knows what it takes to win, and he really helped the team out this year.
Before we move on to the awards, Luke, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of go through each member of the coaching staff and just as a whole, everybody appreciate what they brought. Randy Tomlin, Joey Davis, Chris Glaze, Jim Darren, Thomas Abel, Coy Tomlin. Talk about each of these guys and what you saw from them all summer.
I'll start off with head coach Randy Tomlin. And I think the best thing that Randy brought was his coaching experience and his major league experience. He's a guy that's played at the highest level. He knows what it takes to win. And he was a big part of, I think, helping some of the younger guys understand, this is how we have to play the game of baseball. This is how we have to win. And I think he was key, especially with pitchers. A lot of times when you go out for a mound visit and talk to the pitchers, he's been in that same spot. He's pitched in games like that, and he knows, what it takes to make the pitch, to execute in a situation wise, what pitch to throw, how to execute that pitch. And that was huge for some of the younger pitchers on the staff, was having a guy that's been there, done that, that's major league tested and major league proven to give you some advice on what you should do and what you would do on the mound in big spots. I'll go next to Joey Davis. And I got to give props to Joey Davis as the hitting coach, because I think, early season there was the idea that we could be a power team, work gap to gap. And I think he managed to adapt the offense well to just work for that small ball style of baseball, just looking for base hits, balls on the ground, trying to create chaos. And the Sox were effective in that regard. He did a good job. And I think, that was huge for the Sox. I was out there batting practice, giving the guys tips, and that was huge to help the Sox bats down the way. Chris Glaze, obviously calling the signals, I should say, calling signals for our pitching staff, and he did a good job with that. There wasn't a lot of, missed pitches and things you shouldn't have done in certain spots. I think he was great. And the pitching staff really revolved and evolved over the second part of the season. They got a lot better. So I'll say Chris Glaze did a great job there with that. Thomas Abel at the first base coach, an assistant coach, kind of everywhere you see him hitting fungos pregame to some of the infielders. But as a first base coach, his job was just to kind of, evaluate the play, what's going on, send guys to second, let them know what the situation is. And he did a good job with that, always vocal. And he was fighting for our players. I go to game 3 of the championship where the umpire had a disagreement with some of our players, and Coach Abel was fighting for our guys. And that's what you need to be as one of the coaches. You just want to fight for the guys on your roster, no matter any way you can. Jim Darren, what's there to not say about Jim Darren? Just a great guy, always around talking to us interns, even asking how we're doing, and asking how the players are doing. That's the most important part. Is baseball is a largely mental game, and making sure the mental health of your players and physical health is, in tip-top shape. And he did a great job of that. The injuries this season, they're not on him. They are freak injuries. He could have prevented exactly 0 injuries for the Sox this season, but he kept the guys that were healthy in tip-top shape and in the best mental shape of the season. So hats off to Jim Darren. And finally, Coy Tomlin, the pitching coach for the Sox. One of the best people I've had the pleasure of working around in summer ball. He's always just a joy to talk to. Pregame, always asking about the Yankees. The Yankees win, you see just pure joy on his face. Even when they lose, sometimes he wants to talk to Aaron Boone and really wants Joe Girardi to become the Yankees manager. But as a Philly fan, I can't say I don't think Joe Girardi would be back for the Yankees. Would be the best spot. But I love Coy Tomlin. I'm gonna miss him, and I hope he continues to, inspire future generations of Tom Sox players and continues to help out the pitching staff for the years to come.
Let's wrap up the show here with the big hitters, the awards that we're going through. We went through the awards, every single one of us, about midway through the year. We may have some of the same picks. We may have some different picks. We'll go through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different awards right here. And I'm just going to read them off, and I'll go down the line as I see everybody right here. So, Landon, I'm starting with you for the heart and hustle. And once again, the heart and hustle, as defined by Major League Baseball, is a person that has a passion for the game of baseball and best embodies the values, spirits, and traditions of the game. Landon?
I'm going to go with Perry Hargett. I guess the main kicker for me is that he led the team in sack bunts. A guy that is going to do that a lot. He's laying out his bat on the line for the team. He doesn't care if he gets out, doesn't care about logging a hit. He's trying to better the team and advance them in the scoring position rather than, getting himself on base. And he's a guy that totally could have done that. He was one of the most unlucky players on the team. The amount of times that he laced one over the shortstop or over the second baseman and they made an improbable grab, it happened way too many times to count. But he always had the same expression. Never got too mad at himself. Went up to the bat with the same mentality each time and was like, okay, new at bat, here's what I'm gonna do. And I think his resiliency and his fight to continue to do that. And towards the end of the season, he really did get his bat to ball and got it into more favorable positions for himself. So I think that fight and that heart from him he's gonna be my heart and hustle guy.
Talk about record books for the Tom Sox. Perry Hargett is in there. 5 sack bunts on the year is good for the top spot in the most sack bunts in a season in Tom Sox history. Perry Hargett also top 10 in stolen bases in Tom Sox history with 15 this year. Luke, next is you.
So I want to give a special shout out to Will Genowine. And many of you probably thought that I'd pick him for this award, but I can't ignore Perry Hargett. But to touch a little more on Will Genowine, he came in late season. The Sox needed an outfielder, and he just provided an instant spark plug. He'd work counts. I kind of referred to him as a baby Andrew Manley, not as big as the frame that Andrew Manley was, but Will Genowine just did that role for the Sox. He would rip a single into right field. He'd work a walk and work his way around the bases. And especially for the hustle part, I go to the Evan Tavares 2 RBI double in game 2 of the championship series. Will Genowine never hesitated. He saw that ball off the bat with 2 outs, was on his horse from the beginning. He almost caught Hudson Luderman at the plate to score the tying run, which was the most impressive thing to me of that whole at-bat, besides Evan Tavares's going the opposite way. But Perry Hargett was that kind of guy. I mean, I go back to the first day he arrived. He texted team president Chesley Mullins and says, "I'll be there at 12. I'm ready to play." And that's the mentality that Perry brought with him every day. He'd kind of be the lunch pail guy for the Sox. He'd get in there early, he'd work, and he'd be the leadoff hitter for the Sox. Though many of you might have disagreed with the leadoff spot for Perry Hargett, I think he was just fine in that role. He found a way to get on base, whether it be an error, a walk, or a hit. And he did his job. Out in the outfield, he was rock solid. He made a couple of beautiful throws late down the stretch to deny runners extra bases or even catch them from advancing. And that's why I'm going to roll with Perry Hargett for my Heart and Hustle award.
Jeremy Rose.
Yeah, I think this was the most adaptable award that we could have given out this year. Just down the stretch, it was a different guy. The season it starts off with, JD Wolf being that heart and hustle guy for the Sox, moves down the line to Preston Gamster being that heart and hustle guy for the Sox. Perry Hargett comes in, does the same exact thing, brings the energy, brings the spirit. Will Genowine, right at the end of the season, was that guy for the Sox. So I'm not even going to give this award out. I'm just going to call this one a team award because I think throughout the course of the season, that award changed. That the guy who, could have been the best guy for the Heart and Hustle award changed from game to game, changed from, part of the season to part of the season. And that's what made this Sox team so special, was that there was always at least one guy on the roster who could do that for the Sox, who could be that spark plug, whether it was, Perry Hargett going and taking reps early at for any game that it was, getting into the batting cages early. It was Will Genowine just coming up and being the best guy possible. Just as a person, the same thing with JD Wolf to start the year, Preston Gamster just being that guy. And I can't give the award out to one single guy. It just changed so much throughout the season. If you want a late season guy, it's Will Genowine for the exact reasons that Luke mentioned earlier. But to me, this is a team award, and nothing really encapsulates the Sox season more than that heart and hustle.
Daniel Stein, your Heart and Hustle goes to who?
It's a tie for me between Preston Gamster and Will Genowine. I think if either of these guys were here with the team longer, or if Gamster finished the year here, then it wouldn't be this way. But I think the thing that these two guys have in common is that they're very good baseball players. They come from kind of different areas of the game, but it really says something when us journalists and interns are covering these guys and they're just as down to earth to the players or to the interns as they are to their fellow players. The Will Genowine that you see on the field is the exact same one that you see after the game, liking our tweets and, asking us about our days and stuff like that. Preston Gamster, as like that mic'd up segment and stuff where he's just talking about conspiracy theories and the lost city of Atlantis and all this stuff while taking BP. Like, that is who they are. They stay true to themselves and they play the game in a way that is really not like they're trying to be somebody else. And I think that that's the epitome of heart and hustle. They play the game with a smile on their face. They're great teammates, and they've been really good to us interns that have the responsibility to cover them. So it's a tie between Genowine and Gamster for me.
Schwartz, close out the first award.
Man, I think everybody had such great answers. I could have gone with Genowine. I could have gone with Hargett. I could have gone with JD Wolf. I could have gone with, I feel like Lee Sowers is definitely somebody you could put up for this award as well. But I think I am going to go with Preston Gamster for this award. I feel like he was here for a good amount of time where I can feel comfortable giving him the benefit of the doubt for not being here the whole season. I go back to not only the mic'd up segment where Daniel laid out a lot of great stories, another one, the making of Dippin' Dots, he was very curious about, but that Covington game where, Ben, you're trying to tell him about the moon and, the campfire song thing going on in Covington as well. Like, you always heard him be vocal, whether it was in the batter's box or at shortstop, communicating with the outfielders, communicating with Lee or Jackson, or whoever else, Hudson, whoever was playing second base. And even when Preston was playing third base and wasn't the captain per se of the infield, you still heard him being vocal. He was always that energetic guy, always found ways to get on base. And even though this award is not necessarily for everything you do on the field, he was able to take everything, all the positives from off the field and put it into, the top of the lineup and defensively and be really that glue guy for the Tom Sox. And I think you saw the impact that Gamster had truly when he left the team. And I think that's a big part of why I'm going to give it to him. For sure, Hargett, when he got there June 17th, Luke, I love what you mentioned about him wanting to play right away. And he did play in that game. I think it was at Strasburg when we went the first time. And Genuine down the line was amazing to talk to, and it was a joy to watch him play. Hopefully he comes back next year. We'll have to wait on that. But yeah, I think this one goes to the Horned Frog for me.
I'll give a couple honorable mentions. I'll give more than a couple honorable mentions. So I mentioned these two names when we talked about the awards at the midway point of the season. I want to shout out JD Wolf once again, and I want to shout out Jesus Cesare. Two guys that absolutely love the game of baseball and will do anything for their teammates, both of them. Another one I want to shout out is team president Chelsea Mullins. Will do anything for this organization, puts the heart in Heart and Hustle Award, literally. And then the 40 plus staff members that the Tom Sox have, whether it's us in the press box, whether it's everybody taking the trash out and filling up the water jugs in the dugouts, whether it's the concession stands operators, whether it's everybody that's at the top of the entrance of Cho Airport Field, counting how many people are coming in and attending a Tom Sox game. From top to bottom, we say it over and over again, but the Tom Sox do put on the best experience in all of summer collegiate baseball in the entire country. Whether it be for you or for me, or whether it be for the players, everything, at least we try, is seamless, and that we can thank the many interns for. I did not include this award in the outline, so I'm kind of spurring it on the moment, but I think that everyone is going to have the same answer for it. It's the Media Player of the Year. Who gave the media the best moments? For me, it's Lee Sowers. Lee Sowers, after every single game, he found the camera, cut the audio. Lee Sowers just doing it all, whether it be talking to us, whether it be his media day photos are fantastic, but Lee Sowers is and should be the unanimous media player of the year for the Tom Sox in 2025. Luke, do you have an objection?
Yes, I do, as I was the one to interview Preston Gamster after the Covington game and asked him about the moon, where he took me on a bizarre journey of explaining how much the moon had moved from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. And I think that wasn't the only good interview. I remember talking about Jeremy in the first Covington game about the campfire song. I think Preston was electric there. The mic'd up segment was electric. I wish we got a Lee Sowers mic'd up segment. That one might have fell through the cracks, and I kind of regret not pitching that, but yeah, I think Preston Gamster is also up there, and he's my pick for Media Player of the Year.
For everyone that doesn't know the story, at Covington one day, I think it was July 2nd, Preston Gamster was at bat. I was sitting right there on the first base line where our dugout is, and he looked at me and said, "Come over here, I have a question for you." So I thought, like most of the time, it's a question, hey, how many times has he struck out? What's his batting average? Things like that. Instead, he points up in the sky and says, "Hey, is that the moon?" And I say, "Yes." And he basically says, "Well, we were here yesterday or we were here last week and it was in a different spot. What's going on?" And I basically had to tell him that the Earth rotates on an axis, right? And the moon is ever changing. And I educated him on the tides and everything. And ultimately, he ended up having a great game that day. He hit a home run to almost the exact same spot where the moon was, and it was a storybook game for Preston Gamster. So that one is just incredible. And we'll move on to the next award, an award which we might hear his name or a couple of other names called that we've already talked about, and that is Silver Slugger. I'll go in the same order that we did. Silver Slugger, basically, who was the best hitter? You can interpret it how you want to, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Landon, it's to you again.
I'm going to start off with the guy that, even though he wasn't here for a lot of the time, he struck fear in the eyes of the pitcher anytime he stepped into that lefty's batter's box, and it's going to be Elijah Williams for me. A guy that, even in his first at bat for the Tom Sox, he had a hard hit ball that I don't think it ended up being anything, maybe an F8 or an F9, but the way it came off the bat, we knew from that moment that he was going to be a standout player for the Sox and a guy that in a small ball team would provide that kind of inconsistency in hitting home runs. And sure enough, in Purcellville, he hit one that was a no doubter that probably flew 350, 400 feet. So that's going to be my Silver Slugger just because he was a guy that, even though he didn't play a lot and he ended up being injured and had to leave the team, he was a guy that was going to give you a double or a home run in every at bat that he came. And that's what he was going for. He swung out of his shoes every time, same way every time.
Luke.
Well, my guy is also Coach Coy Tomlin's guy in Brock Clayton. And late down the stretch, you really started to see Brock pick it up. He didn't have to have the wherewithal effect of playing catcher every other day with the addition of Anderson French. He was able to DH a lot. And I think that took a lot off Brock Clayton's shoulders as when he would be able to make contact most of the time, pull side, he would find a gap somewhere with hard contact. He only had one home run, but again, with the dimensions of Cho Airport Field, he was probably robbed of 2 to 3 home runs as it gets pretty deep out into the right center field part of the ballpark. If he had played in Strasburg, he probably has 5 or 6 on the year. And I think a lot of just the hard contact, they had him at the 4 spot, late spot of the season for a reason. He was a run producer. He'd make hard contact. He'd knock guys in. He had some key hits in Stanton and Strasburg to really kind of keep the games close. And I'm going to roll with Brock Clayton as my Silver Slugger in honor of Coach Coy Tomlin, who I'm sure Coy would give him every award if possible had he had a say in these awards.
Jeremy Rose, your Silver Slugger.
My Silver Slugger is gonna go to JD Wolf. I'm just kidding. It's gonna go to the guy who played a lot of the season in front of him, the team leader in home runs. And whether he was up there in a big spot, it was hard contact off the bat of Patrick Neas. Just about every single time he was up at the plate, put a hard swing on the baseball and hit a couple down, the opposite way, especially in that Stanton game. And just the ability for him to put hard contact on the ball, you see that potential. The strikeouts were a problem for him all season long, and we kind of, we hit on that pretty consistently. But the power was there, the slug ability was there. Led the team in doubles all season long, led the team in home runs by the time we closed out the year. And, maybe that would have changed had James Nunnally and Andrew Manley, maybe Elijah Williams stuck around for a little bit longer, maybe Preston Gamster as well. But his consistency all throughout the season of being that power guy, whether he was hitting in the 3, the 4, or the 5 spot for Charlottesville, it was just that power was something that you could always talk about, something you could always hit on, and something that he could always, come through in the clutch with. So it's gonna be Pat Neas who led the team in just about all those slugging categories by the time we closed out the year.
And Patrick Neas, a guy who didn't play at all in his freshman season at Garden Webb because in batting practice, 2 separate times he got a ball to the face. So the recovery from a concussion was just too much at that point. And something he told me is that he wanted to get as many reps in as possible, and he did. Led the team in many major categories, as he talked about, and a mainstay in this lineup from day one, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago. Daniel Stein, your Silver Slugger, before we move on a couple times.
Yeah, there's a lot of good shouts on this one. Elijah Williams, just every time he would hit the ball, it's just boom, 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 just everything going to the outfield every single time. For the sake of spicing things up, I will keep my same pick I made halfway through the year, and that's Andrew Manley. And I know he didn't play the entire year. He only, as I check the stats here, he only played in 15 starts, 17 games total. But how I'm interpreting this is just you talk about when you want an at bat and any situation, who do you want up to the plate? I think that's Andrew Manley. He combined a mature, effective approach because of his vast experience in at Wofford. He's played 3 full seasons there, so he was a really professional hitter. He had a very good understanding of the plate, good eye as well. And although he wasn't the most powerful statistically, the power is in him as he was able to lift one out of there at the Cho with that short porch. So I think that it's really unfortunate the fact that he wasn't here the entire season, but his season-long numbers would have been really impressive if he was staying here for the entire year. So just because he was the best pure hitter, in my opinion, I would take Manley for the Silver Slugger.
Nathan Schwartz closes out once again.
All right, so if I'm going by the true spirit of Silver Slugger, how it's, interpreted in Major League Baseball, I'm going Pat Neas, right? 13 extra base hits, all of that stuff Jeremy mentioned, wound up slugging 353 when it was all said and done, started 37 games, led the team in at-bats, had 33 hits, 27 RBIs, right? He's got the intangibles there. He's got the statistics. He's got the numbers. But I really like Daniel's reasoning for a different player, and it's the unanimous guy for the first team All-Valley, and that's James Nunnally. And I'm putting Nunnally here because I have somebody else for my most valuable player. So, I mean, when you look at James Nunnally and like exactly what Daniel was talking about, I don't think I would rather have anybody else coming up to the plate at any point this Tom Sox season other than James Nunnally. Hit 375 in his 18 games, 24 hits and 64 at-bats. Had 4 doubles, had that home run against Purcellville, 18 RBIs, 10 walks. His OPS finished at 958, 16 stolen bases. I mean, those are just ridiculous numbers. And, there's a part of me that really thinks that if Nunnally is in this lineup down the stretch, not only do the Tom Sox get the 2 seed and a first round bye, but they win the whole thing. And it's hard to pin that on one player, but I really think he was that impactful in that 3rd spot in the order with driving runners home. You mentioned it earlier. I forget who. I think it might have been you, Jeremy, with Langley's runners in scoring position ability. Langley finished 381. Nunnally was above 450 with runners in scoring position. I mean, it was ridiculous what he was able to do at the plate there at the end of June. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Jimmy for my Silver Slugger.
I'll give a couple honorable mentions. I like that thing. I'll give a couple honorable mentions that I don't think anybody has said in this category, at least so far. Kyle Langley, Hudson Luterman. I'll say Tanner Shadle, also with 3 home runs, matching Patrick Nias, kind of doing whatever, whenever anybody needed it. Anderson French, a good late addition. Evan Tavares, that clutch double that we talked about. And then Lee Sowers doesn't fit into this, but if you want to take on-base percentage into account right here, Lee Sowers, by far and away, the most impactful player in terms of that category. So a lot of ways we could go with the Silver Slugger, and I think that everybody had good contributions. The next award is Cy Young, and this is tough because at the halfway point of the season, everybody picked a starter and a reliever to win the Cy Young Award. And for the starter, it was a consensus decision that Evan Allwine would take home the trophy in terms of the Cy Young for the Tom Sox this year. As we've mentioned, he missed a majority of the second half of the season due to that foot injury that he suffered in Covington. I think that was the same day that I was talking about with Preston Gamster shouting at the moon. Fun fact, but just injuries, they stink. So I'd be interested to see what everybody has to say here. I'll go in the reverse order just to give a little bit of breathing room right here, but just to see what everybody has to say about who the best pitcher was for the Tom Sox this season. A number of ways we could go. Nathan Schwartz, to you.
Yeah, this one's really interesting to me. I didn't appear on that podcast episode, so I guess I'm a bit of a wild card here. There's so many guys I could put here. I could put Ian White. I feel comfortable putting him in there. I feel like Brandon Eldridge deserves some love here. Even though the ERA isn't the best, what Dawson Newman was able to do in Game 3 of that championship series winds up leading the team in innings pitched with 29 2/3. Tim Lawson, 9 starts, consistent, but I mean, the guy had a 1.4 ERA, 2 saves, 19 1/3 innings pitched. He only allowed 3 earned runs all season. Trevor Booten is my Cy Young Award winner. Dominant out of the bullpen. You look at what he did in the South Division Championship against Culpeper, going 3 2/3, being able to be that guy. He was a starter for Charlottesville last year, and when the team needed it, he was able to provide that experience and the length in the game that the Tom Sox really needed in that specific moment. So I'm going to go with Trev for Cy Young.
Daniel Stein, opposite order, so it's you up next.
Yeah, I think Trevor's a good shout for sure. And I think I'm going to adopt the same logic that Nate used for his Silver Slugger. And if we're just talking about the single best pitcher on the Tom Sox this season and who was consistently putting together the best performances, nobody was beating Evan Allwine. That was when it was Evan Allwine shove day. I mean, you better pet your deer and pray that you somehow make contact because you probably weren't going to. He had a sub-1 whip in 20 innings of work this season for the Sox, and it really is a shame that his season was cut short because he would have been in contention for one of the best players in the entire Valley this season if he was able to play longer. So my Cy Young pick is still Allwine.
Jeremy Rose.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue to play this fun, adopt a little bits and pieces of, how efficient they were, whether they threw for a lot of innings this year or whether they threw for a short amount of innings this year. And I'm going to go with Ian White. Just what he did out of the bullpen was unlike any other pitcher I've seen in the Valley. The way his slider breaks off of his fastball is unknown to the eyes, and I saw nothing like it from any other pitcher in the entire league all season long. And, while he wasn't in there as a closer or for a closer role, that ERA that set at a 1.4, which was the technical best mark on this roster. 2 appearances in the playoffs, didn't allow a single run through 2 1/3 innings, and gave up 2 runs, one in his first start through 2 2/3, and 1 run somewhere down the stretch. And it was in that spot start against Culpepper where they were just trying to get guys innings. He hadn't started a game all year. That ability to just be the lockdown, get a hold when you need it, give your offense some room to continue to build up if they're trying to stage a comeback, which the Sox were pretty much doing all year long. What Ian White did in his relief role, I think can't go unnoticed, and he's gonna take home my Cy Young. I think if he had pitched for the Sox all season long, and you're not sitting there with Trevor Booten, who had already been there both last season and this season, kind of knew he was going to be in that closer spot, Jason Band, before he got hurt. The addition of Ian White and just the ability to be that setup guy, be that transition guy, I think can't go unnoticed. And a big shout out as well to Riley Rorty for the work he did down the line for Charlottesville. A rough start, a rough first couple of starts for him. Once kind of the month of July hit, maybe late June, he was just about locked down. 8 innings for the Sox and just provided whatever was needed from him to keep the game where it was at, no matter where he came into the game. Maybe a spot start here as well. So shout out to Riley Rorty for the work he put in down the stretch. Ian White, just dominance on the mound.
Luke, you're up.
Well, I can't say that Trevor Booten's not my Cy Young because he is. Coming into this season, working on a new arm slot, having to develop a totally new feel and understanding for the way he pitches, and the way he pitched was just as good as the Tom Sox could have asked. I mean, let's think about it. I mean, for a guy that was the setup man for a lot of the season, having to step in from that role to become the de facto closer for the staff, and he didn't waver. There wasn't a single ounce of wavering. He was just as good as he was in the role of the setup for the Tom Sox, and that was huge for them because losing Jason Ban, who I think deserves some more love for the Cy Young, sucked. I mean, Ban was the guy you'd go to in the ninth. You would take all your worries away. You might walk a guy or two, but there was really a slim chance of anybody making hard contact on Jason Ban, and that was why he was the closer for the Sox. But having Booten step into that role where he created soft contact, and that was his best quality. He wasn't the highest strikeout guy, but he didn't walk guys. He managed to create soft contact, played with the defense in mind, and allowed them to make plays to get outs. And that was what I think was the best part of Trevor Booten's game. And I'm really excited to see him pitch at Auburn this year with the new slot.
Landon, close it out with who you're picking for Cy Young.
I'm going to close it out with a starter that really progressed as the season went on. It's the Don, Brandon Eldridge. He started off the season, I think Nate mentioned earlier, against Strasburg, in that 14-4 loss. And it seemed at that moment that he wasn't going to continue to be in the Sox lineup as much or be a consistent part. But credit to Randy Tomlin for putting his trust in him, and credit to Brandon for continuing to improve every outing that he had. And it really culminated, I think, in Harrisonburg when he put up that performance and the Sox run rule win against them. That was a big confidence boost for him. And then, of course, the Waynesboro game, 6 2/3 innings and a numerous strikeouts. And then he even came in, I believe it was game 2 of the Valley Baseball League Championship, and put in a good shift, helped the Sox maintain they kept the Strasburg lead at bay because they were up for a little bit, but he didn't let anything get out of hand, and he was a good maintainer out there on the mound, and that's why he's my Cy Young.
Couple names not mentioned that I want to make sure get a shout. Hunter Hyatt, he had 5 starts on the year, 2.45 ERA, 1.45 WHIP. JT Gibson as well. Strikeouts were his calling right there. Jason Band, somebody mentioned. Tim Lawson, he pitched well in a couple of his outings right there. Tristan Dietrich had a good outing early in the season. So talent all around in the bullpen, and ultimately got it clicking where it needed to be. Last award of the evening, or I guess of the recording, we're recording this in the afternoon, is the MVP. This is the big one. You can go whichever direction you want to. There's a good chance that it'll be a name already mentioned. So I'll go in the same order we did the last one. Nathan Schwartz, your MVP for the 2025 Charlottesville Tom Sox season is who?
Out of James Madison, center fielder number 14, Kyle Langley. Just top to bottom, not only was he there from day one all the way through, model of consistency, right? Leads the team in hits when it's all said and done with 40, has 8 extra base hits, 25 RBIs, which winds up being second on the team, winds up leading all qualified players in average at 268, 17 walks, 12 stolen bases. And Jeremy is right. He played a perfect outfield. He did not commit one error all season long, and he made some spectacular sliding, diving, leaping grabs out in center or right field. He was a guy that the Tom Sox could rely on, whether it was in the leadoff spot or in the 2 spot. He kind of moved up and down there in the middle of the season, but really found a home at the 2 spot late in the year. And you go back to game 1 of the championship series when the Tom Sox were in the middle of the game, not having much offense, and he provides a 3-run homer. As Jason Mullen says, nothing changes the game quite like a 3-run homer. He provides that spark, and I think that ultimately really just sums it up for me with him being the most valuable Tom Sock this season. So it's Kyle Langley for me.
Daniel Stein, sticking with the same spot?
Yes, I am. Unk and few are in agreement here. Kyle Langley is my MVP because, like, did he have the highest peak? Someone like James Nunnally would argue no. Andrew Manley would argue no. Elijah Williams hit for a higher average, but it doesn't matter because he was here from day one when our starting shortstop was Adonis Velez to, day 60 when our starting shortstop was Jackson Soroy. He's been there through all of the team changes and all of the ups and downs that have happened in such a crazy season. There would be so many reasons to be like, I'm out of here, especially for Langley, who's a relatively local guy from, the DMV. But his consistency, as Nate mentioned, and his ability to just be a 5-tool player. When he wanted the power, he could turn on the power. His glove was incredibly consistent. We knew he was a high contact guy who was going to hit at the top of the order. Then obviously we've beaten it into the ground, but his work with runners in scoring position was phenomenal. And he was a really good leader for the team. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do when he goes back to JMU next year, is just continue to take steps in the right direction. So he's the MVP for me.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm gonna run you guys through a quick little list real quick before I get exactly into my MVP. We'll go James Nunnally, Andrew Manley, Jet Bristow, Will Genowine, Hudson Luderman, Patrick Neas, Tanner Shadle, Elijah Costin, Cole Cleveland, Perry Hargett, JD Wolf, Walker Buchanan, and Braden Weaver. You want to know what the one thing is that all of those guys have in common? They all shared an outfield with Kyle Langley. Langley all season long, there from the get-go, from game 1 to game 44, 46, whatever we got up to. There's nobody truly who was more valuable. They beat the stats into the ground. His work with runners in scoring position leads the team in hits, the defensive play, it's all there. He's a guy who we've mentioned pretty much at every single course of the way down the stretch, whether it's been, at our midseason awards, at our awards so far today. There's nobody who truly contributed to everything the same way Kyle Langley did. I think, to me, he's a clear-cut MVP, the clear-cut best guy on this roster. And it's, Daniel said, not the biggest peak, but the guy who really delivered and was consistently great for the Sox all season long.
Luke, we're halfway through the MVP voting. It's unanimous. Floor is yours.
Well, call me a Hall of Fame voter because I'm about to make this not unanimous. This is a Nittany Lion picking a Terp as his MVP. Jackson Soroy is my MVP for the season. And there's a lot of reasons why I can go with Jackson Soroy. And I think the key one is he was just one of the perfect blends of getting on base, but also managing to create RBIs and hits. I mean, he had 33 hits this season. He walked 29 times if you count both the regular season and the playoffs. He was involved in countless moments for the Sox that were huge. I mean, you take it back to the walk-off in the South Division Championship. He was the guy that hit in the winning run in Lee Sowers. And then in Game 2 of the Championship Series, he was the winning run after he led off the ninth inning with a single. he's just been involved in so many big moments and been a part of huge things for the Sox. That's why I think offensively he's probably the MVP. And then you go to the defensive side where he had to play multiple positions this season and committed very few egregious errors. The errors he committed were mostly tough plays, minus the South Division Championship game, which was a relatively easy play. But he kind of handled his role in the way that he did and was effective in it. He played shortstop. He played second base. I believe he played a game at third base this season for the Sox, and there was no complaints. He went out there, did his job, made plays, made some electric defensive plays that I know Nathan and Daniel are very excited to see him draped in the Maryland flag next year playing baseball in College Park. But I think he's my MVP. Kyle Langley was very great this season, but I got to roll with Jackson Soroy as he was the spark plug late in the playoffs for me.
Landon.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Luke on this one. My MVP is also Jackson Soroy, future Dirty Turk, but I don't want to like take anything away from Langley. It's 1A, 1B in my book. Kyle had a phenomenal season, a model of consistency. The thing about Soroy for me that really him over the edge of Langley was his way to ramp up play as the season went on. I'd love to see his stats from before James Nunnally's absence and after James Nunnally's absence, because I feel like after that moment he continued to bring his batting average up. And it may have honestly been when he committed to Maryland. I feel like from that point on, he was proving to them and proving to everybody else that he's meant to play at a high level. He got some nods at UVA. He played at UVA, but he's going to be a big focal point of that Terrapin squad this year. And his batting average skied up towards 280, like right at the end of the season. And that's something that's the Sox didn't have anybody that over 300 that played more than maybe 20, 25 games, but Soroy was that model of consistency and a guy that if you needed a hit, you needed an RBI late, he got it for you.
All right, everybody passed the test. I think that Soroy and Langley are the correct answers. It's who I would put two. I won't make a decision because I think that you said it's 1A and it's 1B.
We need a tie-breaking pick. It's gonna have to be you.
I would be the tie. We're at 3-2 right now. I'll go Langley. I'll go Langley. Just because I was so impressed with what he did from day one. I remember watching him one game in Waynesboro. It was the first week of the season. Made a sliding catch in center field, and I said out loud, I knew this guy is going to be special, and he was. He is certainly not the most flashy player ever. Neither is Jackson Soroy most of the time, but he gets done what needs to get done. And I think that in baseball, in a game like baseball, the consistency is something that matters. That'll wrap it up for our awards right now, and that'll wrap it up for our show today. Before we head out, I want to give a big thank you to not only everybody on this call, but everybody in the Tom Sox organization, everybody in the Charlottesville community, everybody that's tuning in right now, and everybody that makes the Valley Baseball League possible. This is truly one of the greatest experiences for us, for me, for the players, and for the coaches every single year. And it's the people that make it worthwhile, and it's the people that make it happen. So from the Tom Sox, from myself, from everybody on this call, just a big thank you to anyone that has supported the Sox, whether it be online, whether it be in person at Cho Airport Field, whether it be someone that's come up to us and give us a compliment. It truly means a lot, and it doesn't go unnoticed, all the support and all the appreciation for the Tom Sox. So I'll get out and I'll let everybody have their last word to Tom Sox Nation. Landon, just a couple quick words if you can.
Yeah, look, I mean, being a Hokie coming to Charlottesville, I wouldn't say I didn't have any doubts, but there is always that stigma. But it quickly was washed away, and I had a great time in Seville. I would totally come back. Charlottesville is a great place, and it's got great fans. They care a whole lot, and you could see it when we had nearly 500 people come to Game 2 of that Valley League Championship, flooding the hill behind at the outfield wall. It was fantastic to see, and they really made the games worthwhile. They provided that crowd pop that you love to hear as an announcer. And so it was phenomenal being in Charlottesville.
Luke, your thoughts?
I'll say what I said to end Game 3 of the championship series, and though it didn't end the way we wanted it to end, there will be another championship game for Charlottesville. This isn't the last time you'll see the Sox in the VBL championship. They're one of the best organizations in the Valley. They've had a history of success. I mean, 4 titles in 10 years is as impressive as it can get, to be quite honest. As a new franchise back in 2015, they had their worst season. Since then, they've probably arguably been the best team in the Valley League from that point onwards, and it won't be the last time. And the community has surrounded the Tom Sox. They've helped them become the best organization. The intern staff that they bring in every year is consistently great. I mean, I've seen that for myself with everybody in this call and everybody around the Sox organization. It's a great group of people, and it's an amazing time. I've loved my time in Charlottesville. I would do it again in a heartbeat, 100 times over. And I don't think this will be the last you'll see of the Tom Sox in the VBL championship. And hopefully next year they're bringing back that Landon Weaver Cup to Seville.
Jeremy?
Yeah, the people make the place. Is kind of the best way to culminate all of this. Charlottesville's a lovely town, but it'd be nothing without the people who, are here around us, the people who, you bring into your circle, whether it be players, whether it be staff, whether it be other interns, whether it be fans you meet at games, just the energy that gets created in an environment like this where you have, 60 something days to make the best friends that you can, to create the most amount of connections that you can, is just truly one of the most remarkable things that you can kind of be a part of. So I'm super honored to have been along on this journey with you guys. Super glad that I can call, especially this group of five right here, this other group of five, my really, really great friends, people who I'm going to be connected with for the rest of my life. Just the opportunities that we got here, the opportunity to become friends with everybody and to just create that environment to thrive in an environment out here in Charlottesville has just been amazing. So a big thank you to everybody up and down the staff. A huge shout out to Chesley Mullins for all of the work she's done and for just the environment that she created and allowed all of us to kind of become a part of is truly something that can't go unnoticed. So just a big thank you to everybody who was involved. I've had an absolute blast out here in Charlottesville and wouldn't trade it for the world.
Daniel Stein, you're from Chicago, you go to school in Maryland, haven't spent a lot of time in Charlottesville. What's this summer been like?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been here before. This is probably, with the exception of a week spent in Florida, the most southern place I've been in my entire life. And I have definitely received the southern hospitality that everyone always talks about. That it's a really special place. Everyone here has been super friendly and super caring for me in my first exposure to summer ball and trying to learn a new town alongside it. Obviously, Chesley is the best, and she provides for everyone. I'm literally in her house right now. I mean, that's how generous she is. I've stayed with her the whole summer, and it's been fantastic. And I'll challenge anyone in the Valley League that Charlottesville, it's not even particularly close in my opinion, has the best setup in terms of top to bottom management, opportunities for interns, broadcast setup, and arguably the most important part, the product on the field. We've only been around 10 years and we've won the league 4 times. We've consistently been in the Valley League title. That's not ownership, but it's pretty close, man. And this has been a really awesome experience, and it's the best that the Valley has to offer. And I'm very thankful for my time here. I'm going to remember it for a really long time, and I'm going to remember the people, of course. But it's been a fantastic experience, and I'm very thankful to have spent the summer here.
Tom Sox Nation couldn't get rid of Nathan Schwartz, and Nathan Schwartz couldn't get rid of Tom Sox Nation.
That's right. I love this place so much. I had to come back. Got crowned the nickname Unk this summer, which, will be fitting for the rest of my life, I'm sure, but between this group. But yeah, I mean, this place is something special. I had the opportunity 2 years ago to get to work alongside Ben when, he wasn't, didn't really have a defined role. And now Ben has blossomed into this superstar, graphics guy and media connoisseur, and the on-air guys, the for you, getting to work with you and being able to have the opportunity to lead you guys this summer was an opportunity that I'll cherish forever. What Daniel said about the Mullins family, they've hosted me now 2 years. It's a home away from home for me, and played a big role in why I wanted to come back this year. And then, of course, the baseball is awesome. The community, the camaraderie, all of it. It's my 3rd year of summer ball, and I'm confident in saying it was my favorite year of the 3. I went away for 2 weeks on vacation, and that absolutely killed me, and I couldn't wait. I was itching to get back for days. And I think that just says so much about this team, this community, the people, and everything that's related to the Charlottesville Tom Sox. So I do think, unfortunately, this is it. I don't think there's going to be a year 3 for Unk. But my 2 years have been so special. I'm so happy to be a small part of the Tom Sox organization. And I'll leave you with 5 words. Actually 6 words. I'm sorry. I love the Charlottesville Tom Sox.
Well, that will officially conclude the 2025 Charlottesville Tom Sox season. Once again, 7th championship appearance in franchise history. The games will go down in the record books and everything like that forever. The players are forever enshrined, whether it be on online or what they made an impact on the field. The memories will last a lifetime. The people, they'll stick around forever. But this year is special. The 10th season of Tom Sox baseball is something that will never be topped, and there's a reason that we've been around for a while. And it's everybody that's watching right now. It's everybody that's on the call, and once again, it's the people. And for the last time for this season, I truly, truly appreciate every single person that takes the time out of their day to watch this show, to listen to this show, to have an opinion on what we say, even just to like and comment on our posts. It truly means a lot. And I genuinely really appreciate every single person that is listening and or watching right now. And I truly appreciate, once again, the 5 people that have joined me on this podcast episode. For the final time this season, Landon Weaver, Luke Stefanisko, Jeremy Rose, Daniel Stein, Nathan Schwartz. I've been Rekosh, and you've been listening and watching On Deck with the Tom Sox, the official podcast of your Charlottesville Tom Sox.